The general barked a code word no one had heard in years, and the entire base froze. Every soldier stood confused, except for one woman sweeping the armory floor. She snapped to attention like she'd been waiting her whole life for that command. And here's the part that will leave you speechless. That word belonged to a unit declared dead 3 years ago. So why was a simple cleaner the only one alive who could answer it? In the next 10 minutes, the entire fortress would be torn apart, and her secret would decide whether they lived or burned. Stay with me, because what happens next will flip every expectation you have. And before we dive in, hit subscribe and ring the bell for a simple woman, because these are the stories history tried to erase. The armory of Camp Aegir was never silent, not even at dawn. Steel clattered against steel as weapons were racked and inspected, the scent of oil thick in the air. Sunlight streamed in dusty shafts through the high windows, cutting across rows of rifles and machine guns lined like a choir of iron. Soldiers moved with clipped precision, voices low but sharp as they prepared for the day's drills. And in the middle of it all, bent over a crate of battered carbines with a rag in hand, was a woman nobody paid attention to. Nyra Calder worked like she always did, methodical, invisible, cloth sliding down a barrel until it gleamed. Her posture was unremarkable, her uniform plain, her name stitched to her breast pocket as though even that was half forgotten. To most eyes she was a cleaner, a shadow moving between racks, part of the machinery of the base itself. Then the doors at the far end of the armory slammed open. General Harlan Voss strode in, his medals catching the morning light, his face carved from granite. Conversations died instantly, the air tightening. Every soldier froze to attention, saluting, but his eyes swept past them with a glare like a blade. "Aegis Delta!" he barked. The code shot through the room like a bullet. For a moment, there was only silence. Soldiers glanced at each other in confusion, brows furrowing, the command meaningless to them. The tension stretched, and then, from the back of the room, Nyra Calder snapped to her feet. Her heels clicked together, her spine straightened like a steel rod, and her voice rang out, clear, sharp, automatic. "Ready, sir!" Every head swiveled. The rag in her hand dropped to the floor. The air became heavy, charged, as if the base itself realized something had shifted. Voss's eyes locked on her, and for the first time in years the old general faltered. His lips parted, his breath stilled. That code, buried, erased, dead for 3 years, had just woken something he had sworn was gone forever. Sergeant Damon Cross, standing nearby with a smirk half-formed on his lips, blinked in disbelief. "The hell was that?" Cleaner just snapped to like she's drill-born. His voice cracked with mockery but wavered under the weight of confusion. Before the silence could settle deeper, the alarms erupted. A wail split the air, red strobes flashing against the steel walls, screens above the racks flickered to life, static surging, and then a figure appeared, a face hidden behind a mask, scarf whipping in desert wind. The distorted voice cut through the armory, calm but venomous. "Camp Aegir, your time is finished. In 10 minutes Worm Core will belong to me, and before you burn, you will witness a ghost you buried still walking your halls." The screens flared red, digits blazing into existence. 10, 0, 0, 0. The countdown began. A ripple of dread ran through the soldiers. Cross swore under his breath. 10 minutes? For what? Captain Orion Hale burst through a side door, headset pressed to his ear, eyes burning with urgency. "General, phantom signatures are flooding the grid. Drones, decoys, can't pin them down. They're herding us into blind corridors." Voss's jaw locked, his voice a bark meant to steady the chaos. "Scramble interceptors, double the perimeter watch, secure the worm vault." But the feed's voice pressed louder, overriding the orders. "Your general cannot save you. His codes are already mine." Only the ghost answers the call. Every soldier's eyes darted back to Nyra, still standing rigid, her chest rising with steady control, though her mind screamed. She hadn't heard that code in 3 years, not since the night Nox-9 died in fire. She had buried herself, to survive. And now the past had clawed its way into daylight. The countdown ticked down. 9:32. Static rattled the screens. The masked figure leaned closer, the distortion deepening. You feel it, don't you? The walls closing. The same pattern that erased Nox-9. Today, Camp Aegir follows them into ash. Nyra's knuckles whitened as she clenched her fists. The memories surged unbidden. Missiles tearing through the night, ghost signals twisting radar into lies, the screams of her squad cut short by friendly fire that wasn't an accident. She had carried their silence, lived invisible, because stepping into the light meant painting a target on her back. And yet, every eye in the armory was on her now. Soldiers who had never noticed her before stared like she had sprouted wings. Cross's smirk was gone, replaced by something raw, unsettled. Hale's gaze cut sharp, questions burning unsaid. And Voss, the man who had signed the report declaring Nox-9 dead, looked as though he had seen one of his own ghosts step out of the grave. The countdown ticked on. 8:57. "General," Hale pressed, his voice taut. "This is coordinated. The drones, the feed, the core, they want us fractured. We need decisive orders." Voss bared his teeth, but before he could speak, a new set of commands flashed across the screens. "Withdraw perimeter guards from the worm wing." The signature was his own. The tower erupted with shouts, confusion spilling into panic. "That's your order, sir, but you didn't give it. It has your clearance." Nyra felt the knot in her gut tighten. This was the same play, step for step. Fake orders, ghost signals, a countdown to destruction. And if they followed it, Aegir would die like Nox-9. Her sleeve itched where ink lay hidden beneath fabric, the insignia of her unit etched into her skin. She had sworn never to reveal it, but silence had killed her squad once. Silence would kill this base too. The feed's voice came again, thick with mockery. 9 minutes remain. Who will you follow? The general with empty codes, or the ghost who still knows the pattern? The soldiers shifted, their fear mounting. Cross muttered, voice low, almost pleading, "Cleaner, what the hell are you?" Nyra's eyes met his, steady, unflinching. She didn't answer, not yet. Timing was everything. The countdown ticked on. 8:21. And in that suffocating silence, one truth pressed against every wall of Camp Aegir. The base no longer belonged to its general. It belonged to the ghost who had just answered a dead command. Engines screamed to life across the tarmac as interceptors scrambled into the sky, their wings flashing silver against the desert sun. Dust blasted off the runway, stinging eyes and throats as soldiers rushed to defensive stations. From the tower, the radar grid lit up with a scatter of red, phantom signals blooming in every quadrant. "They're everywhere," one controller shouted, voice cracking. "Multiple vectors, too many to be real." General Voss gritted his teeth, pointing at the screens. "Track them anyway, don't let a single one through." But even as he spoke, the patterns shifted. Dozens of false returns multiplied, weaving nets across the display. The interceptors banked hard, chasing blips that dissolved into static the moment they closed. Ammunition wasted into empty sky. On the ground, Captain Orion Hale's voice cut sharp over comms. "It's misdirection. They're pulling us away from the core sectors." "Then break their net," Voss barked. Hale clenched his jaw. Orders were one thing, physics another. Worm's decoys weren't random, they were surgical, each false echo placed to lure defense wings farther from the vault. Every minute stretched the perimeter thinner, exposing the heart of the base. Back in the armory, soldiers watched the feeds projected on the wall, their knuckles white on their rifles. The masked figure reappeared, this time framed by a live shot of the desert. Behind him, columns of dust trailed moving convoys. The distortion in his voice had smoothed into something almost intimate. "See how your steel birds scatter, chasing ghosts while the truth walks through your front door. Your general feeds you commands, and still you bleed resources into the sand. Camp Aegir is already mine." A low murmur rippled through the room. Cross spat to the side, though his bravado had wilted. "Guy's got a mouth, I'll give him that." But his eyes darted nervously toward Nyra, as though waiting for her to contradict what they were all seeing. The broadcast didn't relent. Footage shifted to the vault corridors. Security cameras hijacked, feeds dripping with red static. Guards were shown abandoning posts under falsified orders, their faces pale with confusion. The masked figure's voice cut over the images like a blade. "You see? Even your own eyes lie. Even your orders betray you. How many minutes will you pretend to hold this fortress when the very walls bend to me?" One soldier muttered under his breath, "This feels like ivory fire all over again." His words died as soon as they left his lips, but the damage was done. Heads turned toward Nyra, searching, connecting dots no one wanted to say aloud. The countdown blared in the corner of every screen, 7:46. Nyra stood unmoving, cloth still in her hand, though she had long since stopped polishing steel. Her gaze was locked on the pattern of decoys flickering across the grid. She had memorized this dance before, in the last hours of Nox 9. The signatures multiplied, vanished, shifted again, exactly the same as the night her unit burned. She felt the weight of the rag, the oil on her fingers, the insignia hidden beneath her sleeve pressing like fire into her skin. She wanted to scream at them to stop, to pull back, to see the trap. But silence was still her armor, and breaking it too soon would shatter everything. The feed zoomed closer on the vault door, its lights blinking between green and red, confusion sewn deep into the heart of Aegir. The masked man's laughter spilled through every speaker, guttural and taunting. 7 minutes left, you scatter like ants chasing lies, while your treasure waits for my hand. Ask yourselves, when the core falls, will you blame your enemies or the general who let it happen? The soldiers shifted uneasily, some glancing up toward the tower where Voss barked his endless orders. For the first time, cracks appeared in their faces, not just fear, but doubt. Hale's voice snapped across the comm again, louder, more urgent. "General, this is coordinated psychological warfare. Every second we chase phantoms, morale collapses. We need a counter-strategy, not brute force." But Voss slammed his fist against the console. "Hold the pattern, drive them out!" His voice carried rage, but no certainty. The masked figure's tone dripped with satisfaction. "Yes, listen to him, march in circles, burn yourselves hollow, and when the fire comes, remember the ghost among you who knew the dance but stayed silent." The screens flickered. For a heartbeat, the distortion fell away, and Nyra swore she saw eyes staring straight into hers as if the enemy feed could pierce walls and miles to find her. The countdown ticked on. 7:01. The hum of the bass shifted from steady to broken, like a heartbeat stuttering. One by one, sectors of Camp Aegir went dark. Corridors plunged into shadow, security lights flickering before dying. The southern motor pool lost power, engines coughing into silence. Cameras blinked off in rapid succession, their feeds collapsing into static. "Blackout!" a voice roared through the comms. "We've lost grids 3 and 4. Inside the tower, panic clawed at the operators. Fingers flew across keyboards, sweat dripping, but every command returned dead links. The screens that did remain alive flickered, red overlays crawling across them like veins. "This isn't random," Orion Hale snapped, eyes scanning the chaos. "It's surgical. They're cutting sight lines to the worm vault. They want us blind where it matters." General Voss barked back, his voice hoarse but defiant. "Route emergency power. Seal the vault manually. We hold the line." But even as he spoke, a new order flashed across every surviving screen. "Withdraw perimeter guards from the worm sector." The room froze. The command bore Voss's clearance codes, his digital signature unmistakable. Officers stared at the projection, then at their commander. One of them whispered, "It's your order, sir." "I never gave that," Voss thundered, veins bulging at his temple. "That's a forgery, ignore it." But doubt had already wormed its way in. The signature was clean, flawless. To the system, to the soldiers who trusted it, the command was real. On the floor below, murmurs spread like wildfire. Soldiers checking their tablets saw the same order blinking across their screens. Withdraw. Abandon the vault. For the first time, their hands hesitated on their rifles. The feed surged back to life, the masked figure filling every display. His laughter was low, deliberate, meant to crawl under their skin. "Your general's codes are mine." His voice bends to me. "You think you fight for Aegir, but every step you take obeys me. Withdraw and watch the vault fall." A ripple of voices rose in the armory. If the system says it, what if he did give the order? He looks rattled. Maybe he's hiding. Cross shoved a rifle into the rack hard enough to rattle the steel. "This is bull. You telling me the old man's in on it?" "No way." But even his tone wavered, conviction fraying. Nyra Calder felt the weight pressing in from all sides. She'd seen this trap before. Ghost signals, forged orders, the collapse of faith from within. This was how Nox 9 had died. Not from lack of firepower, but from hesitation, from soldiers doubting whether the hands guiding them were their own. The countdown blared again, digits searing. 6:14. Hale's voice cut through the noise, fierce and sharp. "General, if they've got your signature, then command is compromised. Every second we wait, the enemy dictates our moves." Voss roared, slamming his fist into the console. "I said ignore it. We fight our way back to the vault." But the soldiers around him hesitated. Their eyes flicked between the man and the screens, between the sweat dripping down his brow and the cold certainty of the system's orders. Trust was cracking. In the armory, a young private spoke what everyone else feared to ask. If the codes are his, how do we know which voice to follow? Nyra's chest tightened. She could feel the insignia under her sleeve like a brand, her skin itching to reveal the truth she had buried. Her jaw clenched, but she stayed silent. Not yet. Timing mattered. The masked figure leaned closer into the feed, voice dripping with venom. 6 minutes. Your walls are already mine. Your general's orders are already mine. And soon the ghost you buried will stand in daylight, whether she wills it or not. Every eye turned again, almost involuntarily, toward Nyra. She kept her gaze fixed forward, refusing to move, refusing to break. But inside, her pulse thundered. She was watching the same script play out, and unless she stepped into it, they would all burn. The blackout deepened. Another sector died, corridors swallowed in shadow. The worm vault lights blinked red, its locks disengaging in silence. And the soldiers of Camp Aegir stood suspended between two voices, one they no longer trusted and one they feared to believe. The countdown ticked on. 5:52. And in that suffocating moment, the fortress felt less like a stronghold than a coffin waiting to be sealed. The static on the wall screens cleared, and what replaced it struck harder than any explosion. A corridor deep within Camp Aegir filled the image, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. 6 soldiers knelt against the wall, helmets stripped, their wrists bound behind them. Their faces were pale, eyes wide, breath fogging in the cool, recycled air. The masked figure stepped into frame, his distorted voice curling like smoke. "These are yours, General. 6 loyal defenders who followed your orders straight into my hands. Every 30 seconds that passes without Chimera surrendered, 1 will vanish." A digital counter appeared at the corner of the feed, 0:30. It began to tick down. The tower erupted. Operators shouted over one another, some demanding breach orders, others insisting it was bait. General Voss slammed his fist on the railing. "Seal that corridor. Get a squad in there." But the locks were still dead, systems cut. The blackout had sealed the doors as tight as coffins. Every command returned the same error: access denied. In the armory, soldiers crowded the screen, eyes locked on the kneeling figures. Cross swore under his breath, jaw tight. "That's Delta's squad. They trained me. He's going to pick them off on camera." The timer bled seconds, 009, 008, 007. One of the bound soldiers lifted his head, lips moving in a prayer too faint to hear. 003, 002, 001. The feed flickered. The camera jolted as if someone had yanked it aside. When it steadied again, only 5 soldiers remained. A helmet clattered to the floor, rolling into frame. The masked man's laugh scraped through the speakers. 5 remain. Tick, tock. A strangled cry tore from one of the younger privates watching. He slammed his rifle against the wall, eyes blazing with helpless fury. Around him, others stood frozen, their faces hollow, their certainty bleeding out with the seconds. Voss roared, spittle flying, "Break those locks, blow the damn corridor if you have to." But his desperation sounded like defeat. The authority in his voice, once iron, now rang brittle. The counter reset, 030. Hale's voice crackled through the comms, tight with rage. "General, if we keep reacting, he'll gut our morale before he even reaches the vault. This is psychological warfare, and it's working." But the feed drowned him out. The camera panned across the 5 survivors, their chests heaving, their faces streaked with sweat and fear. The masked figure's hand brushed across their bowed heads like a butcher choosing the next cut. Nyra Calder felt her breath catch. The trap wasn't just external. Hale was right. This was the same script as Nox 9's endgame. The enemy had them watching their own men die, helpless, fracturing from within. She saw the faces of her squad superimposed on the feed, brothers and sisters who had knelt in fire while she listened to silence. Her sleeve itched, the insignia beneath it burning like a brand. Her instincts screamed to step forward, to shout the truth, to tear open the play before it devoured them all. But her silence had kept her alive. Breaking it would change everything. The counter hit 005, 004. Cross's voice cracked, too loud, too raw. "Cleaner, you know this, don't you? You've seen this before." His eyes were wild, pleading, the last thread of denial breaking. "Tell me you have a way to stop it." Nyra's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Timing was everything. The base wasn't ready to hear it. 001. The feed jolted again. Another soldier gone. 4 remained. The masked man's voice slithered back, soaked in triumph. "Do you feel it now? The weight of every second? The taste of helplessness? 4 more drops in the hourglass, and your fortress breaks itself." The younger private staggered back, bile rising. Another muttered, "We're cursed, just like ivory fire." His words spread faster than fire, infecting those who still clung to hope. Voss bellowed above it, his voice raw. "Hold your ground! No one moves without my command!" But his words fell like stones into an ocean already boiling with panic. The counter reset once more, 030. Hale's voice cut sharp, aimed not at the general but at the men. "Don't let him break you. This is theater. He wants you paralyzed." But paralysis was already seeping in. Doubt hung thick as smoke. Soldiers clutched their weapons not in readiness but in desperation. Nyra closed her eyes. She could still hear Aaron Cross, the comms officer of Nox 9, Damon's brother, cut off mid-sentence as the fire consumed them. She felt the phantom heat on her skin, the silence that followed. This was the same song, and unless she changed the tune, Aegir would burn like they had. The counter blared. 007, 006, 005. Cross's voice trembled, broken but filled with conviction now. "My brother, Aaron. He was Nox 9, wasn't he? His name's inked on your arm, isn't it?" His eyes shone not with accusation but desperate hope. "Tell me I'm right." Nyra's throat tightened, but no words came, only silence. 001. Another gone. 3 remained, the feed filled with laughter that scraped bone. 3 left. Enough to keep you watching, enough to keep you breaking, and as the counter reset again, Camp Aegir felt less like a fortress than a theater of despair. Its soldiers reduced to an audience, its command unraveling by the second. The countdown to collapse ticked on. The desert sky burned with contrails as the interceptors made another desperate pass. Missiles streaked outward in a precise formation. Sierra 5, a maneuver designed to trap swarm drones between overlapping arcs. For a heartbeat, hope flickered across the grid as dozens of enemy signatures lit red. Then, as if mocking the attempt, the drones shifted in perfect unison. The formation bent and curved, splitting apart just enough to bleed through the trap. Every missile detonated harmlessly in empty sky. On the comms, a pilot's scream rattled through. They just countered mid-flight. How the hell did they learn that fast? The answer came as fire. A cluster of drones broke off, their engines shrieking, and slashed down across the perimeter. Explosions blossomed along the wall, shockwaves rattling windows. The soldiers in the armory staggered as dust rained from the ceiling. Orion Hale's voice cut sharp across the din. "General, they're adapting in real time. Every tactic we throw, they neutralize in seconds. This isn't just Worm, it's version 2. General Voss's knuckles whitened on the console. His barked commands came louder, harsher, but less certain. "Then hit them harder. Cycle formations. Don't give them breathing room." But the grid told another story. Each maneuver logged, countered, erased. The more they fought, the faster Worm learned. The masked figure returned to the feed, his tone silk over steel. "Do you see now? Every move is my move. Every bullet is my lesson. You fight, and you only make me stronger." The soldiers' faces tightened. They weren't just losing ground, they were teaching their enemy how to kill them faster. Nyra Calder felt the weight settle heavy in her chest. She had known Cade's genius was ruthless, but this was worse. He had perfected the same predatory learning curve that had devoured Nox -9. She saw the echoes in every movement, every false signal, the past repeating step for step. The countdown flared. 4:28. In the armory, Damon Cross slammed his fist into a crate. "We can't keep doing this. Every plan we feed them turns against us. We're just digging our own graves." His eyes locked on Nyra, voice cracking. "You know this, don't you? You've seen this before." Nyra kept her gaze steady, but her silence was fraying. Cross stepped closer, desperate. "My brother, Aaron. His name's on that patch under your sleeve, isn't it? You flew with him." Hale's voice joined in, sharp and cutting. "Cleaner if you've got answers, now's the time. People are dying every 30 seconds. She said nothing, but the rag in her hand trembled. Then it slipped, falling to the floor. As she reached to retrieve it, the fabric of her sleeve pulled back. Just enough. The room froze. Ink glimmered in the flashing red light, the unmistakable insignia of Nox 9, a Valkyrie in descent, wings etched with names every soldier had read on the memorial wall, carved in stone as dead. Cross's breath caught. His voice broke into a whisper. "Aaron." The murmurs spread in waves. Soldiers who had once mocked the cleaner now stared at her like she had risen from the grave. From the tower, General Voss looked down through the glass. His face drained of color, his lips parting soundlessly. He had signed the report that buried those names. He had stood before cameras, declaring them lost in glory. And yet here was one of them, breathing, alive, standing in the middle of his armory. The masked man's laughter slithered through the speakers. "There she is. The ghost who should not exist. Tell me, General, how does it feel to watch the lie you built unravel in daylight?" Voss staggered back a step, gripping the railing as though the steel could steady his shaking hands. The weight of years pressed into his shoulders, the silence of his cover-up suffocating in the face of truth. Hale seized the moment, his voice ringing clear. "You all saw it. The enemy's trap is the same one that burned Nox 9, and she's the only one alive who's fought it and lived." The soldiers turned from the general to Nyra. Their fear found a new anchor, their doubt a new direction. Nyra exhaled slowly, the secret she had carried for 3 years now carved into the open air. Her voice was low but steady, the tone of a commander, buried but never broken. "If you follow his commands, you'll die like we did. Worm feeds on your moves. Stop giving it lessons. Fight smarter, or don't fight at all." The countdown blared louder. 4:02. The bass hung on her words. Voss's authority bled into silence. And in that silence, Nyra Calder, the woman they had ignored, mocked, forgotten, stepped into the place she had been running from. The ghost was no longer hidden. The base was collapsing in slow motion. Worm drones tore through the skies, their maneuvers too perfect, their patterns too fast. Every defensive strike became another lesson for them to adapt, to evolve. Soldiers huddled in shadowed corridors as the blackout deepened, the feed still bleeding red with the faces of the 3 surviving hostages. The countdown blared. 3:37. In the tower, General Voss barked another order, but no one moved. His voice had lost its weight, stripped of power the moment Nyra's sleeve slid back. Authority had shifted without a vote, without ceremony. Soldiers glanced at him with hollow eyes, then turned to the woman in the armory who bore the insignia they thought was long buried. Captain Orion Hale didn't hesitate. He strode forward, his voice cutting sharp. "We can't follow ghosts on a screen. We need someone who knows this battlefield, someone who's beaten it before." "That's her." He pointed at Nyra, his tone ringing like steel. "She has command now." The silence broke like glass. Soldiers snapped to readiness, weapons gripped tight, waiting for Nyra to speak. Even Cross, still trembling from the weight of revelation, straightened. Nyra's chest rose with steady breath. She had carried silence like armor for years, but silence would kill them now. Her voice came calm, precise, each word sharp enough to cut through fear. "Ground teams, stagger fire, don't chase the swarm, force them into cross-kill zones." Her gaze flicked to Hale. "Get interceptors on standby, no launches until my mark." Orders spread like fire through dry grass. Soldiers moved, not with panic but with purpose. The fortress that had felt like a coffin moments ago began to breathe again. The masked figure's voice hissed from the feed, his triumph curdling into irritation. So the ghost commands again. "Do you think your dead names will shield you? Worm cannot be fooled twice." Nyra ignored him, her eyes locked on the tactical grid. She saw the familiar patterns, the same spiral that had trapped Nox -9. Her pulse thundered, but her mind was clear. This was the script she had memorized, and she knew the final page. The countdown blared. 2:52. She stepped to the secondary console, her hand trembling only once before pressing to the biometric pad. The screen flared white, then bled into symbols no one else in the room recognized. A warning blinked, restricted protocol, midnight sigil. Gasps rippled through the tower. Cross whispered, reverent and fearful all at once. "What is that?" Nyra's voice was steady. "It's what they built into us. A failsafe they buried when they buried Nox 9. They thought it died with us." Her eyes narrowed. They were wrong. She lifted her arm, rolling the sleeve to bear the insignia. The Valkyrie's wings glimmered faintly, circuitry woven into the ink. The names etched there seemed to pulse with light. The masked man's voice spiked in panic. "No, that protocol was erased. You cannot—" Nyra closed her eyes, the words burning from memory, a code she had never spoken since the firestorm. Her voice rang out, low and sharp, a litany of command syllables that struck like thunder. Midnight sigil, Nox override, authorization Calder 9. The system responded with a whisper almost human. Identity confirmed. Protocol armed. For a fraction of a second, the world held its breath. Then the sky froze. Every worm drone locked in place mid-flight. Engines shrieked, then cut. Their wings stiffened. Their targeting systems blinked dead. In the silence that followed, gravity reclaimed them. One by one, then in waves, the swarm tumbled from the heavens. Fireballs erupted across the desert as steel slammed into earth. Explosions rippled like thunder rolling over the sand. The ground trembled beneath Camp Aegir as hundreds of drones fell in a storm of wreckage. Soldiers gasped, then roared. Cheers erupted across comms, voices breaking with disbelief and joy. "They're falling! They're all down!" The feed flickered, static clawing across the masked figure's image. His voice was jagged, furious. "Impossible! That failsafe was destroyed." Nyra's eyes burned into the screen, her voice cold as stone. "Ghosts don't vanish. They wait." On the grid, the swarm collapsed into silence. The worm vault's locks re-engaged, lights glowing green. In the captured corridor, the hostages were freed, guards storming through to drag them to safety. The countdown froze at 2:11 and vanished. General Voss staggered against the railing, his face pale, his authority shattered not by defeat, but by the truth that had risen beneath him. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The soldiers no longer looked to him. Their eyes were fixed on Nyra Calder, the cleaner who had stood invisible for 3 years, now revealed as the commander who had turned despair into survival. The base thundered with life again, orders flying, boots pounding, weapons steady. The fortress that had felt like a coffin only minutes before now roared with defiance. The masked man's voice returned one last time, broken but venomous. "Enjoy your moment, Ghost. Worm will adapt. I will adapt. And when I return, not even your midnight will save you." The feed snapped to black. Nyra pulled her sleeve back down, hiding the insignia once more. Her chest rose and fell, steady, but her eyes still burned. She had saved them for now, but she knew the fight was not over. The war with Cade had only begun. And as the dust of falling drones drifted across the horizon like ash, the soldiers of Camp Aegir stood in awe of the woman who had stepped out of silence and into legend. The ghost was no longer hidden. The fortress still shook from the echoes of falling drones. Smoke coiled upward from the desert like funeral pyres. But inside Camp Aegir, the air was different. It was the first breath of survival after suffocation. Soldiers who had braced for annihilation now stood stunned, rifles slack in their hands, watching wreckage rain like ash. But survival did not mean safety. The feeds in the tower flickered back to life, lines of code crawling across consoles that should have been dead. Hale's eyes narrowed. Someone still routing commands from inside. He turned and saw Major Leora Keene hunched over a secondary terminal. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, eyes fixed not on defense, but on extraction. "Step away," Hale barked. Keene didn't flinch, her lips curled, her voice calm, almost pitying. "You fools don't understand. Worm isn't the enemy, it's the evolution. You can't stop it by clinging to ghosts." Soldiers swung their rifles toward her, hesitation flickering. Keene raised her hands slowly, but her eyes glittered with defiance. "I didn't betray Aegir. I saved it from irrelevance. Dr. Cade built the future, and you all are too afraid to step into it." The room seethed. Cross spat on the floor. "You sold us out. You sold my brother out, all so you could kneel to a machine." Hale's jaw clenched. He nodded once, and 2 guards seized Keene's arms, wrenching her from the console. She didn't struggle. She smiled. "This isn't the end. You can kill a traitor, but you can't kill inevitability." Her words echoed as she was dragged away, but the room no longer bent to her conviction. The men and women of Aegir had seen their base saved not by inevitability, but by the ghost standing silently in their midst. General Voss still clung to the railing, his shoulders hunched, his face pale. For a long moment he said nothing, the weight of silence heavier than any shout. Then he finally looked down at Nyra Calder, and his voice broke. "I signed their death." His words cracked, raw. "Nox 9. I signed the report. I told the world it was friendly fire, an accident. I buried your names to shield command from scrutiny. I thought silence would prevent war." The admission fell like stone into still water. Soldiers shifted, some with shock, others with bitter confirmation. Hale's face hardened, but he didn't speak. Nyra stepped forward, her sleeve rolled back again, the insignia glimmering with the names etched into its wings. Her voice was steady, cold, but not cruel. "Silence doesn't protect the living, it kills them. You buried us to save your command, and in doing so you let the same trap fester until it nearly killed them too." She gestured to the soldiers around her, their faces young, but scarred now by the memory of what they had seen. Voss's eyes watered, his hands trembling on the railing. "I thought I was carrying the weight for all of us, but I see now I was only carrying my shame." He sagged into his chair, the stars on his chest dulled under the shadow of his own confession. Hale's voice rang out, not cruel but firm. Command isn't a title, General. It's a trust, and right now, that trust belongs to her. The soldiers responded without hesitation. One by one they straightened, weapons lifted in crisp salute, not to Voss but to Nyra Calder. The sound of boots striking concrete echoed through the armory like thunder. Cross stepped forward, pulling a worn insignia from his pocket. His brother's patch, weathered from years of being carried. He laid it gently on the table before Nyra. Aaron followed you once. Now I do too. Tell us where to stand. For the first time, Nyra's composure cracked, not into weakness but into a quiet acceptance. She nodded once, her voice cutting clear. We stand together. Ghosts don't fight for glory. We fight so the living remember. The air inside Camp Aegir shifted again, no longer suffocating, no longer fractured. Order was returning, but not the same order. It was a new spine of trust, built not on rank but on survival, on shared fire, on the shadow of Nox-9. And as the sun set outside, streaking the desert in blood-red light, the soldiers of Aegir knew one truth: their fortress no longer belonged to ghosts of silence. It belonged to the ghost who had chosen to speak. The wreckage still smoldered across the horizon, columns of smoke rising like black spires into the night sky. The fortress was alive but scarred, its walls trembling with the echo of what it had endured. Soldiers moved through the ruins with the stunned steadiness of survivors, patching breaches, carrying wounded, gathering what could be salvaged. Inside the armory, the atmosphere was different. Not relief, something heavier, sharper. The weight of knowing they had seen a ghost step out of the grave and take command. Eyes followed Nyra Calder wherever she walked, whispers threading behind her. Valkyrie, Nox-9, Ghost. Captain Orion Hale approached, his expression caught between pride and urgency. They'll follow you now. You saw it, the salute. You turned this place around in minutes. If you take command, Aegir will never fall again. Nyra shook her head, slow and steady. She looked past him, toward the scarlet horizon where the drones had fallen like rain. They don't need a ghost to lead them. They need the living. Hale frowned, but before he could argue, Damon Cross stepped forward. His face was streaked with soot, eyes red from exhaustion, but his stance was firm. In his hands he carried his brother's insignia, worn and weathered, the last fragment of Aaron Cross. He extended it to Nyra. "This belongs to you," Damon said, voice low but fierce. Nyra's gaze softened for the briefest moment. She closed his hand back around it, pushing it toward his chest. "No. It belongs to the next, who stands when the fire comes. Carry it, Damon. Lead them when they need it. That's how your brother lives on." His throat tightened, but he nodded, clutching the patch as though it were a heartbeat. As the night deepened, soldiers gathered in the yard, unprompted, exhausted, bloody, but unwilling to sleep. They looked to Nyra, waiting. She stood before them, her voice clear in the dark. 4:30 every morning. You'll gather here. No speeches, no ranks. You'll train in silence. Drills, endurance, fire discipline. This is Ghost Hour. You'll remember what happened today, and you'll never let it happen again. Not while you draw breath. Boots struck the concrete in unison, a sound that carried through the fortress like a vow. Ghost Hour was born, not as ritual, but as legacy. General Voss watched from the tower, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow with shame. He knew command was no longer his, not truly. And yet, as Nyra's words carried across the base, even he stood a little straighter, as though her fire could burn away his silence. When the drills dispersed, when the fires dimmed, Nyra Calder walked alone across the tarmac. The desert stretched before her, vast and endless, the horizon still glowing faint from scattered flames. She pulled her sleeve tight once more, hiding the insignia, burying it back into skin as if it had never seen light. Hale's voice called after her, but she didn't turn. Cross saluted in silence, his brother's patch pressed against his chest. Nyra's boots crunched over gravel, carrying her into the night. She didn't look back at Camp Aegir. The fortress would endure without her, forged by fire, bound by Ghost Hour. Somewhere out there, Ivar Cade still lived, still schemed, still believed Worm's evolution was inevitable. He had stolen her squad, stolen her years, and nearly stolen Aegir. She would not let him steal again. Her silhouette blurred into the desert haze, swallowed by smoke and starlight. To the soldiers she would remain Valkyrie, the ghost who saved them. But to herself she was something different. Unfinished, unburied, hunting. Ghosts don't die. They wait. And that is how Camp Aegir survived. Not because of orders from above, but because one ghost refused to stay silent. Nyra Calder walked into the desert alone, chasing the man who thought he could bury her forever. The fortress was safe for now, but the war was far from over. If this story gripped you, make sure you hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next untold chapter of A Simple Woman. I want to hear from you. If you were in Nyra's place, would you have revealed the insignia or kept the secret in the shadows? Drop your answer in the comments below. We read every single one. And don't stop here. On your screen you'll find more stories of ghosts, soldiers, and secrets history tried to erase. Click one now and keep walking with us into the battles no one was meant to remember.